Packers fans, stay up to date on all of your Packers news this season via our newsletter. You can sign up for the PackersNews.com and more Journal Sentinel newsletters by clicking on the link in the brief field of this video.
Hello, Packers fans, and welcome into the Green 19 podcast. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Tom Silverstein and Ryan Wood here at FedEx Field in Landover, Maryland, where, guys, the Packers have fallen 3-4 through 7 games in the season, losing today 23-21 against the Washington Commanders. Should have been one of their best chances for a win in recent weeks. I'm just going to start off with a question, a simple question with what I'm sure is a complicated answer. Is this a good team having a bad year, or a bad team showing their colors?
It's a bad offense dragging the Packers down. That's what it is. They, for whatever reason, the quarterback isn't playing very well. The wide receivers aren't getting open. It's a total suckage of offense that's taking the Packers down. I still think they're a fairly talented team, but not contending team.
A suckage of offense. The man has a way with words. Ryan, would you agree?
The Packers are the Titanic. The offense is the iceberg. And it's, as he said, pulling it down. I would slightly disagree. I think that the receivers were open a fair amount today. The problem is that they had almost 10 drops. I mean, they dropped the ball so much from the very first third down of the game when Allen Lazard is wide open on a slant, hits his hands, drop, to near the very end when Amari Rodgers is wide open down the right sideline, hits him in the hands, dives for it when he didn't need to, drop. Everywhere in between. It was drop city in the nation's capital all day, and boy, look, they gave it to Aaron Jones today. He had 18 combined carries and targets. He was not just their leading rusher. He was their leading receiver. He had about a 40% usage rating, 18 on 47 plays. That's good. They gave it to him. It didn't matter because they have no one that can catch the ball. When you're in this league, when your running back is your best receiver. And his second touchdown catch was a play that I'm not sure, outside Allen Lazard, any receiver on this offense can make. That's a problem.
Spoon, they finish, or go ahead.
How many of those balls were Rodgers' crappy balls out into the flat? Right. I mean, man, half dozen of those?
The third and two.
He kept throwing those. Oh, early in the game, too. He threw one down to Jones. I mean, every single catch was hard to make. He was almost never right on target. The Dobbs drop was terrible. I don't know about that.
Which
Amari
one?
Rodgers, the fourth down.
Okay, yes.
Amari Rodgers, that would have been a highlight catch if he made it. Yeah, he needs to make it. But it would have been a highlight, real catch.
It should have been a touchdown. It was a layup.
Oh, no way.
Absolutely.
No way.
Nope. Hit him right in stride, right in the hands. He's got to catch it. I saw the replay
No,
about
it
20,
didn't.
25 times.
No way.
Absolutely did.
No, it did
Absolutely
not. He had to reach out and catch it off his
it hit him right on a dead sprint. He should have hit his head on the back of the goalpost.
Anyway, I thought Rodgers was all over the place with his throws.
If it matters, I asked Amari Rodgers after the game, that ball where it needs to be? Absolutely.
What's he going to say?
I said,
well, Aaron Rodgers
I said, was that out in front of you a little bit? He's like, no, it hit me right in the hands. That ball was right where it needed to be. I completely disagree.
But Rodgers was all over the place. He was missing balls right and left. There wasn't anybody really open a lot, not down the field. You know, he hit a couple to Sammy Watkins that were okay. But every time you looked up and you saw Rodgers, and he had a lot of time. I thought he had a lot of time in the pocket. He couldn't find anybody. And when he did, his throws were not on target. I mean, he's a part of the problem here.
I saw a different game. When you have 12 incompletions and half of them are drops, or at least over half of them are drops, you got to catch the ball.
But 5 of them are in the flat. What are those going to do? What? You mean you're acting like these are all down the field?
I can think of
50-yard
at least
games.
3 or 4 of them that were downfield. I mean, the slant on the first third down, that was a good 10 yards downfield. The one to Amari Rogers, which I guess you disagree with, but I will go to my grave saying was hit him right in the hands on a dead sprint.
Okay.
That was
all right. We'll count that one. Okay.
okay. The one to Dobbs on the fourth down. Here's the question that I don't know the answer to. It didn't end up counting because it was one of 2 Josh Nijman holdings, but they had a play where Romeo Dobbs looked wide open second quarter down the middle of the field. I don't know if that was the wrong route. I'm guessing it's the wrong route, but he that should have been a touchdown if not for the holding.
Are you talking about the scramble play where
Yeah.
he ran to the right,
Right.
and Dobbs didn't play the scramble rules?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not just drops. It's receivers running the wrong route, not following the scramble rules.
And on the Romeo Dobbs, the fourth down attempt, where he got blown up and it was broken up, apparently on replay, if you watch it, it doesn't look like Sammy Watkins got the block he was supposed to, which is what let that man come in and break up the pass.
And that's been
on
part of
Dobbs.
their issues, right? Is not having all 11 doing their jobs. Look, I'm not saying that clearly Aaron Rodgers is not playing at the very top of his 4-time MVP game. I'm not saying that this is vintage 2020, 2011 Aaron Rodgers. I'm saying he doesn't have any receivers that can catch.
Could it be a little bit of all of it, though? Because, I mean, you think about, too, there were some of those drops. The Romeo Dobbs drop on, I think it was like a 3rd and 2. That ball was basically in the ground.
Yeah, that was.
What about the deep ball he throws that was uncatchable?
To Sammy Watkins.
Sammy Watkins. That was a terrible throw.
That's fair.
He overthrew him by 15
if
yards,
it's
and that
in-
should have been a PI.
Yeah.
So I just my
The
impression
timing.
going off of this is that it wasn't a very good game for anybody, but your quarterback's got to lift you up at some point.
So basically, outside of Aaron Jones, just bad offense all around, kind of.
Yeah.
Lots to fix all around. But you did mention the offensive line and said he had decent time. This offensive line was supposed to get a shakeup this week, and then it sort of did, but not the one they thought they would. With David Bakhtiari not playing today, just because of his knee, how do you think the starting 5 did without Bakhtiari? And then I'll come to you as well, Ryan.
Well, I didn't get a chance to really study it, but there were a number of times I looked up. My impression is that he had enough time, that it wasn't, there weren't guys just running free. I don't remember any Royce Newman Olays out there. I just thought that it was solid. Now they had to give help to Tom. They had Aaron Jones chipping from time to time and the tight end on that side, and they didn't really run the ball all that well. So that was a downside of it. But I think if other things had been going right, it would have been enough for a winning performance.
Ryan, after the game, Zach Tom talked to you about David Bakhtiari and essentially said, we all just know because of Dave's knee, we have to be ready at any time. I don't think he meant it as a slight, but that's a pretty telling statement.
No, I don't think that was a slight either. It's just reality. The reality is that David Bakhtiari's availability is unpredictable because the knee is unpredictable. He's played well when he's been healthy, but and because of that, the one question Matt LaFleur wasn't asked after the game that he's got to be asked is, early in the season, Matt LaFleur said that even when David Bakhtiari returns to being a full-time player, he will not practice 3 days in a row. And all of us, I think, took that information. It was like, okay, I mean, that happens in this league. You get guys that are at a certain place in their career, they're veterans. You don't need a full week of practice to play. His last off day was Friday, October 17th. Friday, October 7th. He's practiced all 3 days, each of the past 2 weeks. I wonder if they pushed him a little hard. We'll see what Matt LaFleur says. One thing about the offensive line play as a whole, the the Commanders didn't blitz much at all. I mean, they were in two-shell all day. It helps. Not that the Jets, I mean, as Spoon said, there was a lot of Royce Newman olays. I mean, it's not that they were getting blitzed while they were not good against the Jets. They were just getting beat in their matchups. But it does help. One hit on Aaron Rodgers all day, no sacks. It helps when the other team doesn't blitz.
Rob Demoski of ESPN, who was next to us in the press box, was looking at the stats and info and said that they never sent more than 4 all day.
Yeah, so that's going to help your offensive line. They dropped in coverage. Might be one reason why, Spoon, you thought there weren't as many receivers open. They dropped in coverage all day. Basically forcing them to dink and dunk and take what they got underneath, and it's easier on your pass protection when you're not going against blitzing.
Aaron Jones finished with how many touches?
17 touches.
Those were split pretty evenly, pass and catch. And some of those passes too were like, not necessarily a shovel pass, but I mean his first touchdown, it was a pass, but it was behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
All of that to say, though, is I know we said that there are issues all over the rest of the offense, but is this how Aaron Jones should be used?
Yeah, when you're getting about 40% usage rating, unless you want to be on IR by week 11, that's pretty solid. It's when you have one guy getting a 40% usage rating, and the argument is give him the ball more, it shows how little you have around him. Because that's a lot. That's a large bulk of running the offense through one guy. You've got to have more guys around him step up, and that to me is the biggest problem. They don't have that.
Spoon, do they need to get that in terms of a trade over the next week?
Well, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, I think they do if they're going to salvage anything out of this year. But I think they also have to decide, is one guy going to change everything for them?
And is there that one guy available?
Yeah, who is that one guy? I mean, if I were Gutekunst, I'd actually be looking for 2 guys. I would be looking for 2 veteran guys who can still get open, don't have to play 70 snaps a game, but, sort of, I mentioned in the blog, like Emmanuel Sanders did for San Francisco a couple of years ago. It comes in, he's a reliable guy, and fits in. I think they need 2 guys. I really do. I don't think they have enough right now to be a competitive team, not with the schedule they got coming up.
Could there be a spot open to fill someone with a trade? I'm trying to think of a nice, respectful way to ask this. Does Amari Rodgers make it through this week after he's fumbled and muffed punts a couple of times this season, and we kept saying eventually it's going to hurt him, eventually it's going to bite him, and it did today, giving Washington the ball in the red zone. Defense really got a win out of that drive, holding them to a field goal, but that was still 3 points in what became a 2-point game.
I'd be surprised if they let him go. I could see him being inactive for a while, but I don't know. That's early to cut a 3rd-round pick. You never know. Something could click with him next year. I don't think I'd give up on him this early.
And, Ryan, by the end of the game, they were without Randall Cobb already, then without Alan Lazard, who hurt his shoulder. Amari Rodgers was in the game. I think at one point the receivers on the field were Amari Rodgers, Romeo Doubs, and Samori Toure in his first action. Do you try to salvage, to use Spoon's words, Amari Rodgers as a receiver? Because, can you keep justifying putting him back there on punt return?
He got into a bit of a rhythm until he didn't at the end. No, he's got a long way to go. One note on the trade deadline. I think that we're about to see perhaps what Brian Gutekunst thinks of this team this season going forward. Because if you don't execute a trade, if you got a guy out there you give up a 1st-round pick for at receiver who could come in and help this offense, one reason for that might be because you're not expecting this to be a late 20s 1st-round pick. One reason for that might be you're expecting to have the value of this 1st-round pick a whole lot earlier, a whole lot heavier than what the Packers have been used to over the past decade. So I think it'll be interesting to see if Brian Gutekunst is convicted in the talent of this team. It is screaming to go get a receiver. They need that. And they needed that coming into the season, but they especially needed that with Christian Watson's hamstring issues, with Sammy Watkins missing 4 games, and who knows how long he'll be here before he gets hurt again, with Randall Cobb being out for the foreseeable future. They especially need that now. If you're convicted in the talent of this team this season, the long term, by December, they're going to be in a position to make a run in what is a really watered down, wide open NFC. I don't think you hesitate. If you aren't convicted and you know that means that you're going to have a first round pick maybe in the teens, it might be a reason not to give up a first round pick.
Let's focus on the defense. Woo, that was a tough word. It's late. Let's look at the defense. Guys, for a while there, they were doing all the heavy lifting. I think how many points did they hold them to in the first half?
It was 10. No, first half was 14-10, yeah.
So 10, and of those 14, 7 of them were from the defense. They almost had another touchdown before it was called back for a call that we will get into in just a minute. Do you focus, when it comes to the defense, do you focus more on what they are able to do early in the game and kind of shut these teams down early on, especially over the past couple of weeks? Or do you focus more on their collapses, so to speak, in the second half, late in the second half, and how much of that has to do with what the offense isn't doing?
Well, initially, I walked out of the press box down to the locker room thinking, okay, this is not a good defensive performance. And then I just started thinking about it on the way down. And it occurred to me that the time of possession and the number of plays put the defense in a terrible position. So they had 2 back-to-back possessions. So where they defended, there was the muff, and then they had to defend again.
In the red zone.
Yep. And then they defended, Campbell got the touchdown, and they had to defend again. And so by the end of the first half, they were, I forgot how many plays they had been in, but it was 72 plays to 47. And I just don't think you can hold up playing like that, especially with your offense. Now, this defense is not a dominant defense. It's not the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of 2020 or even the Rams of last year. But it's good enough to win a game if your offense is any good. And I thought, except for the 2 plays that McLaurin made late in the game, the touchdown, there were a couple other plays too. But 23 points isn't horrible.
And essentially, the defense held this team to 14 points. But no. I'm sorry. To 20.
The Packers only scored 14 points.
For 14.
But
that's what
all the offense had to do was score 16 points to win, and it couldn't do that. So I don't think it was a failure.
And then there was a drive too. I'm trying to pull it up here. There was a drive at one point, I think in the third quarter, where they were on the field for almost 9 minutes of game time. And I want to say either before or after that, the offense went 3 and out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's not complimentary. We knew that.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
What we've been saying last 3 weeks.
In between those double possessions, they went 3 and out and 5 and out. So, they came right back on the field.
Yes. Washington scored a touchdown. Washington scored a touchdown on a 5-play drive that lasted 3 minutes. And then the Packers offense came back out on the field and went 5 and out. Mm-hmm. And then the 9-play drive, and then the Packers came back out on the field and had 7 plays, but turned it over on downs.
Yep, we
So-
got it.
Yeah. All of that to say, they're not getting much help from their offense.
No, and Jair Alexander wanted to be matched up against the team's best receiver, and today he was again. And Terry McLaurin was better on 3 plays. And, Alexander defended him 30-some plays, but on 3 of them, McLaurin was better.
And those are the 3 that'll get remembered.
Those are 3 that counted the most.
That's cornerback.
Ryan, we've seen this defense. Essentially, for this defense, I kind of consider this now week 2 because this is the new look defense. Are they moving in the right direction in the scheme they're running? Do they stick with this?
Well, what they're doing now is better than what they were doing before. I don't think there's any question about that. I'm totally with you, Spoon. I mean, I've been saying the last 2 weeks, right? It's been a theme that they're not getting enough from their offense. The thought that I had is at some point it can also be an excuse. Like at some point you just have to buck up, take the ball away. They obviously did that once today.
Twice.
They had a chance to do it again.
Yeah.
And I know, Cassidy, you know a whole lot more about what went on with that play than I do. But it reminded me a lot about Jerron Reed's strip sack in London, where they recover at the 7-yard line up 2 touchdowns, and they can end the game right there, and defensive holding penalty. 2 times the last 3 weeks, a penalty has prevented what should have been a back-breaking defensive play. I mean, at some point, I am fully with you. Yes, the offense is putrid, and almost any defense is going to collapse if 72-40. So you can't have that. But at some point, if you are going to be this dominant defense that 7-8 first-round picks, all the money they've invested on that side of the ball is expected to be, you just have to go out there and do it regardless of excuses, and they've yet to do that.
But I don't think they are a dominant defense. I think
agree.
we were wrong. I think, we didn't take into factor they're not deep at outside linebacker. Quay Walker's still a rookie. I have to agree with you now about Stokes. I think he's really playing poorly. He had a terrible. Yeah, you can take that one. I agree with you. He had a terrible game today. I still cannot figure out how he blew that coverage down with Amos and let Antonio. I want to say Graham.
Gibson.
Gibson.
I think it was
run
Savage
across the middle.
in the end zone.
No, it was Stokes.
No, it was Stokes.
Oh, no. I'm saying I think it was Stokes and Savage, not Stokes and Amos. In the
No, it
end
was
zone?
Stokes and Amos. So
Okay.
either Amos needs to call it out, or Amos is probably like, this is really easy. I got the outside, you got the inside, and they both go outside. That's just inexcusable. And that would have been a stop. That would have been a 3rd down stop.
By all impressions, if you go back and look at the 2-point conversion at Tampa Bay, they didn't run it as executed. Stokes took the wrong guy on that one, too. It's been a season-long thing.
Yeah, there's an issue there. And I'm starting to agree with you that maybe they do need to put Douglas in there and then play him in the nickel, play Stokes in the nickel.
Let's not let Rasul Douglas off the hook either. He dropped 3 picks today.
Yeah, he did have a couple that he should have had. But he was at least around the ball
He was, very
constantly,
much. Played,
all
yes.
day long. And so that change, I think, needs to be made.
The thought that I have kind of had in my mind about this defense and in context of the team, having now covered the past decade, 9th season, and seeing how many times the Packers just didn't have the defense, had that high-flying offense. And, I mean, I'm curious, is this defense better than last year?
It's not playing better right now, I don't think.
Is it better than 2020?
Oof. Close. Yeah, I think so.
I think it is.
I think it is. Yeah.
I think it with a competent offense, I think it might be better than last year. I mean, I agree, on the field, brass tacks, bottom line, but 72-47, my goodness. They finally have a defense that all these Packers offenses of the past, all of them, could have won a Super Bowl with. This is a good defense. This is a championship-winning defense. Go back to the Mike McCarthy quote. What was it, 2015, 2016 Combine. They finally have that. and now they don't have the offense.
Yeah.
It's just a shame for this team. It is a shame for this team.
It's, you have to think back to the drafts and not procuring a wide receiver in the Jordan Love draft. Somehow, some way, even if they took Jordan Love, they needed to get a wide receiver, and they didn't.
And this past year.
That's hurting them.
Something to your point about switching Douglas outside. Something that both Douglas and Alexander talked about this past week, it was my story this weekend, was how much more confident they feel when they're on the same side of the field together. And it seemed like that happened again today when the two of them were on the same side of the field together. That play didn't really go anywhere. And you only get that by having one of them in the slot. You're not going to get that by putting the two of them on the outside, but is it worth the sacrifice to put Douglas on the outside?
Yeah, I don't know what. I'd have to go back and look and see whether there was any factor in them being on the same side. I just, right now, I would think about, I want Douglas on the field on the outside because he's just around the ball so much more. And Jair Alexander could have had a pick today too. There were a number of balls. Yeah, that's bad. These guys have to start.
It felt like they were going for the ball more though than they had been.
Yeah, I would say that, and not really forcing it.
Right.
Like they were breaking on the ball.
Yeah.
Now having Tyler Heineke helps because the first half he was throwing the ball behind everybody. But he kind of cleaned up his act and played pretty good in the second half.
The point that I made about Rasul Douglas and Eric Stokes, it's not nickel. It's in base. Having Rasul Douglas on the field instead of Eric Stokes in base when you can only have two. Nickel alignment, I don't mind Rasul Douglas inside, and I don't think Eric Stokes can play inside. So
No, but Alexander goes in there when he's matching up.
He does.
And if he matches up against Stephon Diggs next week, then he'll be in the slot a lot.
My goodness, he has to every single snap, right?
They're going to play so much zone in that game. No way are they playing man.
The
against
Justin
those
Jefferson
guys.
rules.
They're going to sit back and cover two.
Why?
Because you can't play man all day against Josh Allen and that receiving core. They're going to just kill you.
I don't know if you can put any other
I don't know
corner
what
on
else
Stephon
they can
Diggs.
play. I don't know what they're going to play, but they're going to be hurting next week.
Yeah, it's not going to be good for them.
Yeah.
And that Bills defense is pretty good, too.
It is.
It could be ugly.
Really
Next
ugly.
week, you might have to go on like pay-per-view and it'll be illegal in 38 states. We're going to get to this quote in a little bit, but just to like pop it in here, Aaron Rodgers said tonight that this might be the best thing for them because nobody's counting them. Everybody's counting them out for next week. So we'll discuss that in just a minute. To answer your question about the flag that pulled back Rasul Douglas's touchdown, it spent a lot of time looking at it with our colleague Pete Doherty and looking at the rule. And the rule says that if the quarterback is in the pocket and the receiver is more than 5 yards down the field, the defender cannot initiate the contact. And that if the defender initiates the contact within 5 yards, he must release it after 5 yards, which seems really confusing to try to remember when you're in the middle of the play. And that's what Eric Stokes did. He initiated the contact at the 4 yard mark and didn't let go until the 6 yard mark. But he felt like because of the move that the running back had done, because it was actually a running back, he felt like because of the move the running back had done, it was a double move, that he could have touched him. And that's essentially what he was told. That was the explanation he was given. You can't touch him on a double move.
Is there anything in that rule about double moves?
No, there's not.
So the rule still stands.
The rule still stands. What was confusing to him was that was the explanation he was given. Like, well, you can't touch him on a double move.
So he the official relayed the rule wrongly. The rule is correct, but he relayed it and communicating it wrongly.
Right. Like, it was called correctly, but it was just relayed to them in a weird way because he was like, I've never heard that before. I can't touch him on a double move.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like a practical thing that he's talking about, like we look for it on double moves or something like that. But, hey, it's an offensive league, and those calls get made all the time, and they bring back plays. how many PIs did Washington have against the Packers? You know, they had all kinds of PIs and illegal hands to the face. It's an offensive game, and anytime that happens, you can be ticked off, but you know, you just have to shake your head and say everything's against the defense. It's just the way it is.
That's essentially what Stokes said. He said, I guess I'm just supposed to defend routes on air now. But anyways, before we wrap up, let's get back to Aaron Rodgers' comment that this might be the best thing for him because everyone is going to count him out for next week. Just yes or no answer, Spoon. Is that legitimate, or are you calling BS on that?
I'm calling BS on that one. I don't. You know, the smell test is, okay, have you been competitive? Have you been kind of in the games and you can see flashes? And I haven't seen any flashes from this offense. You know, maybe a little bit Aaron Jones, but he still hasn't had like a 70-yard run or anything like that. There's nothing explosive about their offense. You know, maybe if they can, you know, start out at the 25, get to the 40, and punt to the 1 every time, they could get a tie, maybe, you know, a 0-0 tie or something like that. But I don't see it.
Yeah. Ryan, you mentioned that when this team left Washington in 2016 with a loss, Aaron Rodgers said at his locker the next week, I think we're going to run the table. And they went to the playoffs. Is there a chance of that happening this year?
Yes, there's a chance. It's late and I'm tired. Was that the last time they were here in Washington during the regular season?
It's every 8 years, so yes.
4 years.
No,
for
4 years.
Oh.
I believe it was.
I think it was too.
Yeah.
I know they were between then and now. Had a preseason game here.
Yeah, and they had a playoff game, but I think that was in 15.
That was before. That was in 15. So the reason I ask is that the last time I left Washington, I made a vow to myself because I was wrong. I'll never forget driving away from FedEx Field. They're 4-6. They'd just been blown out the week before at Tennessee. They were blown out, lifeless, dead. Here, they're done. Over. They didn't lose again until the NFC Championship game. From 4-6, 8 straight wins.
What was the next game? Philadelphia?
Was that
They
Philadelphia?
went on the road against Philadelphia.
Yes, it was. It was because that was Devontae Adams had the really big play that kind of got him going. But the rule that I made for myself, because there was no reason to believe at 4-6 that this team was going anywhere. They were done. There was no reason. There's no reason to believe it right now. They've lost 3 straight for the first time in the Matt LaFleur era. They'd never lost 2 straight regular season games in the Matt LaFleur era. There's zero reason, if you've watched these 7 games, to think that this team is going anywhere. But the NFC, the Bucs lost to the Panthers today. They're 3-4. The 49ers are 3-4. The 49ers also played the Chiefs, and a lot of teams lose to the Chiefs, and they went and got Christian McCaffrey. But the NFC right now is the best thing going for the Packers. It is the gift that keeps on giving. I do think at the end of the day, yes, they can turn it around. I've seen in next week, I think they're going to get railroaded in Buffalo. I think we all do.
Watch them come out and win.
I've seen crazier things. Like you never know. I don't think it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to pick them next week. I'm not going to pick a close game next week. Mm-hmm. But I've seen crazier things. I mean, you just never know. I do think at the end of the day, and I've never said this at the trade deadline, 9th season, I've never said this. I think they have to go anywhere. I think they have to trade for a receiver. I absolutely believe that.
They could be lucky next week for it to just end 42-17.
Yeah. Or, I think
I would be surprised if they scored 17 points on offense.
I think
one of those may be a defensive score.
Late October road game to Atlanta. You remember that one where they had nobody? I think Clay Matthews.
Yeah.
All the receivers were out. They lost that game.
In the championship game, right?
The regular season game earlier that year. Do you remember? Everyone was out. Everyone was injured. They lost that game by a point, 2 points. But
right.
There was no reason to believe that they were going to stay within 3 touchdowns of that Falcons team that day, not on paper. And they played them to the very end. And that was completely illogical. You just never know. So I don't think that they're winning next week. I don't think it's going to be close. If they win, I've seen crazier things happen.
But there's not a game where you go, oh, I could see them doing a little bit of this. Tell me one game where they've played offensively like, oh, there's a little bit of, sign that they can break out of this. I have not seen one sign since week 1
On
that
paper,
they could be
those
any
games
good.
were these past 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's just no. Now maybe part of it is Rodgers' thumb. I don't know. Maybe he can play better. Maybe getting a wide receiver this week would pump everybody in the organization up. It didn't do that much for San Francisco. I don't know. But usually I have a gut feeling that a team's going to start playing better, but it's because I've seen flashes. I just haven't seen any flashes.
What was your gut leaving Washington 2016?
Boy, you know what? I don't even remember it.
I remember
I
it
can't go
vividly.
back. I don't remember that at all. I'd have to go back and look at the game. And so they must have had, did they have Jordy Nelson then and Adams?
Yep, that was his return season.
Was Cobb still there?
Yeah, and what was a big Jared Cook. That was the game where it was a loss.
That's right.
But this was the game where he really got
They
kick-started.
finally started throwing to him.
Yeah.
I remember that. We were ripping McCarthy for not getting him the ball, and he kind of changed everything. That's the kind of thing they need.
Even with all that, I thought this team was dead leaving FedEx Field in 2016. I thought that they were completely done. And run the table didn't just happen. I mean, it's Packers lore now, but it didn't just happen. They pivoted how they played. They played much, much better. For this team to go from 3-4 and do anything like that, they're going to have to play immeasurably better than how they've been playing. And it's got to be drastic change. Like it was a drastic change in 2016. But yeah, that's possible. I don't know if it's going to happen. I don't know if I'd put money on it happening. But yes, it is possible.
Yeah, I just keep thinking each week, like, oh, this is the week the offense is finally going to click, because you just expect it, and they've yet to actually do that. Guys, I'm going to let us wrap up here. I know we've still got some work to do and a Green Bay to get back to. But as we do wrap up this game and get ready to head to Buffalo, make sure you stay tuned to PackersNews.com for full coverage of the wrap-up of the Washington loss and getting ready for the Sunday night showdown in what at the beginning of the year a lot of people thought was going to be a Super Bowl preview. But who knows now? Who knows? But like you said,
anything is possible, as Kevin Gurnett once said.
as long as you believe. Guys, thank you for joining us as always. Guys, thank you so much. This has been the Green 19 podcast from JS Online and PackersNews.com.